All right, here comes the intro. Welcome back to another episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Canby. This is episode 59 with Marcus Crowder. Marcus recently won the official Strongman Games in the Open Division, earning himself a spot to the Giants Live Tour. In the past, he has finished first, second, and third at America's Strongest Man. He's also pulled 1,000 pounds this year and is the fifth American to pull 1,000 from the floor conventional. He's the owner of New Millennium Fitness with The Pit. So today we're going to dive in on all things Marcus Crowder on today's episode. So tune in and find out everything you need to know about Marcus. All right. Welcome to the show, Marcus.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. That's a great introduction. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I realize I used one of the pictures twice, but we can clean that up for next time you come on the show. But the first question I wanted to start with, and I'm not sure if I ever got an answer, but why does Paul Mauser call you the cyborg?
It's something to kind of stick with after I did the block record. I ended up breaking the world record for like a week until Jacob rebroke it. But ever since then, he's like that, and plus the stone press. He's always been just calling me something like out of this world with pressing.
So it's not, that doesn't have to do with that you're part machine or anything?
It could be. I had enough surgeries now, so I definitely got a little metal in me.
Metal. All right. Is there any nicknames that you rather have?
Oh no, I'm fine with anything.
You fine with anything?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I remember back when Brian Shaw tried to give himself Gigantor. But I always say it's interesting. Most of the times nicknames like Cyborg and others usually stick because it's what people have kind of given to you. But I wanted to kind of talk about, because you had a pretty interesting path leading up to OSG, because you also competed in America's Strongest Man. And that was, of course, you had a great result taking second. And of course had a couple wins in terms of events. But yeah, let's talk about in terms of like kind of prepping two major shows like that together. But how did you feel leading into the prep for both ASM and OSG?
So basically the way I took it, I took the things that I was probably weaker at each two events and try to train them and make those a little more priority. Stones being one of them. I really probably did the most stone work I did in a long time. ASM natural stones didn't go as planned, but it's one of those things I learned a lot from that. That was my first natural stone load. But just seeing how more technical certain events can be, it helped out a lot going into the future.
All right. Oh, excellent. Now, when you say you were training kind of stones a little more frequently, now were you focusing on, let's just say, kind of like overall fatigue and like running heavy stones towards the end of your workouts? Were you working on height? But like, where was your kind of hiccups when it comes to training stones? Are you saying that wasn't one of the greatest events for you?
Honestly, I took it each week a little differently. One week would be like a little lighter, no tacky, more for height on lower weight, and then the following week I'll try like almost like max, because the 425 would have been a huge PR for me for stones. But honestly, I actually figured out a new technique 10 days beforehand. So I'm actually really looking forward to training stones now with my new development of training I can do with the newer technique, if that makes sense.
All right. Any you got time to share your new technique?
So basically before I was kind of lapping the stone and then letting it go instead of using the weight to kind of sit down real low like a front squat. Before I never put two together. So when I tried to sit down after lapping it, the mobility just wasn't there. But my front squat mobility was there because the weight pushed me down. So it was more using the weight to counterbalance in order to get a little lower. I'm almost ass to grass doing it like that way. Now I've got to get used to the coming out of the hole.
Oh, interesting. So you talk a little more of having a little more of a kind of like a like standing out of the hole and then throwing your hips, kind of more of technique. Because there's sometimes
I could get down into it.
Interesting.
Like, I guess the weight counterbalance of it, not 100% sure.
Interesting.
But I'm lucky I picked it up because I don't know if I got the 400-pound stone at OSG if I wouldn't have picked that technique up 10 days out.
And you figured that out this past training cycle?
Yep. Right at the end. 10 days from OSG, I kind of was watching YouTube and just kind of watching people how they just holding on to the weight the whole time, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Getting into it.
So you end up between ASM and OSG, looks like there was about a month in between the two. Um, so with ASM, of course, you had a great. We mentioned before you had a great result. Looks like you were doing well through the first 4 events. I know you mentioned the natural stones wasn't, of course, first time training that or first time competing in that. And then I had a good run of the power stairs, but unfortunately fell down to second. But did that second place drive you into your training and then the last month of prep into OSG?
Actually, yeah, it did. But it also I learned a lot from it. Just after watching Lucas and Rob, just how technical sound they were with how they approached the event. Actually, I want to say stepped me up a couple levels going against those guys uh, in my development overall. Because usually, like I'm kind of like I'm just gonna go out there and try to lift it type thing. I do some technical stuff, but like the natural stones, I didn't have no idea the center of the mass and everything. I didn't put that together until kind of afterwards when I lifted it up without it being set where it needed to be set. And then just not, there's no chance of me grabbing it the way I had to grab it to get it. I actually took 8th place in that event. So big learning curve.
All right. But for instance, of course, everybody goes into America's Strongest Man. I know you're a previous winner in 2020, but everybody goes to America's Strongest Man, wanted to win America's Strongest Man.
Yep.
So, of course, kind of finishing in second, did that kind of did it get put a little more fire under you to kind of really push for the OSG events and really push for doing well and winning and ultimately winning OSG?
Yeah, it definitely put like a little fire in my butt. It was one of those like I had to take things smart too, though, because 4 weeks after coming from a heavy show into another heavier show, I took the first week off, and then I basically went ahead and hit about like 90% of the comp stuff, and then I basically tapered off. So it was like one of those like I had to be smart with it, even with the fire, because I feel like a lot of people they'll kind of like drive and overtrain, trying to push it a little too hard, or sometimes like dialing it back after knowing I had a heavy show, even though I had the fire to want to go out there and go crazy, but I think it helped out in the long run.
So did you end up doing like a 2-week prep and then taking deloading and then going into OSG?
Pretty much. Yeah. So I took off, then 2 weeks, 90%, probably about 80%, and then tapered off into OSG.
Okay. All right. So you never even went, so did you ever touch contest weight for any of the any events maybe leading up to the show?
I think the frame, just because I was worried about my grip a little bit with the frame. I think I did do 800 on the frame at my gym. But other than that, everything else was lighter weight.
So maximal. I think I always usually say, especially for shows like OSG, I always say sub maximal is usually the way to go. Maybe if there's a certain event you really want to blow out of the water and feel confident in.
I might have went a little heavy on the deadlift with 850 for 3. But it was more, I lost a little weight. I kind of wanted to like test it out a little bit. And I was using the Kabuki bar too, so it was a newer deadlift bar. But it's one of those like usually I don't go that heavy, but 850 isn't like maxing on for a thing.
Well, technically that's 85% for you, right? Being 1,000-pound puller.
But with the mammoth bar though, it wasn't a deadlift bar at the account. So I still got to pull. That's what I'm kind of hoping I get that chance at the Giants max deadlift. I would love to pull 1,000 on an actual deadlift bar.
Now, if you had to put a certain percentage, how much harder do you think a 1,000-pound mammoth pull is versus a 1,000-pound regular bar or deadlift bar would be?
So I hit 955 during this prep for that max deadlift. And so it felt terrible, but I don't know if 1,000 would have been there. So I would say, kind of like a single fly suit percentage. Was that like 25, 50 pounds maybe?
Okay, all right. So interesting.
But the crowd at NC Strongest, there was probably like 200-300 people in there cheering. And I had that big of a crowd kind of because it was like I think it was like a Gatorade convention center type thing. So there was like a lot of people around doing like wrestling and stuff and stopping to watch the cheer. Like that, the atmosphere was pretty nice. So I'd love to get that atmosphere again at Giants Live, but even more people.
Yeah, I would say tens of thousands of people, right? So that'd be quite the show. So let's talk about the actual official Strongman games. So originally, I actually got a chance to do like a quick interview with one of the OSG video guys. And my predictions was, of course, Marcus Crowder. I also had Joey Lavallee, Jeffers. I had the Moose. Of course, Westervinsky. I think I mentioned either Tyler Obringer or, of course, a buddy Nate Goldtree. So of course, I was able to list a lot of the guys, but I thought just based off the events, I thought you of course were the person to beat, and I thought of course you proved that. You ended up winning the press medley and the deadlift, of course. Surprise, surprise. But how did you feel that the other events went for you? Because you end up deadlift. I think you end up podium 5 out of 6 events. So. Which usually is, of course, the being consistent throughout the events is usually going to be the recipe to winning. But how did you feel about the other events outside of the static events?
Going into it, I actually felt really good. I felt like all these events but Stone's the only one I was kind of like really, really nervous for. But luckily going into Stone, I had a good enough point lead that I didn't have to worry too much about it. But get like 5th place, which is what I got. I ended up getting 5th place on there, I believe. As far as the LO1, the sandbag toss, back in 2021, I think I did it in 21 seconds, and I missed the bag over, the 60 bag over. So I knew going to this one, if I could hit every bag and not miss one, that it'd be a good time. The Moose killed it though. I think he had like 17 seconds. I think I ended up getting 19. It was one of those, like I was really happy with that performance, especially going into a 5-point lead going into Stones. Then I would say even the movement event, the only thing I was a little shaken up about was I didn't realize the Denny Stones were going to turn. So one of them kind of spent and hit the back of my leg, and that's why I kind of like fumbled for a second, which probably cost me about a second on the time, which that's from 1st to 4th type thing, especially with the guys that we got competing. But all the events for me was actually pretty good, like I said, other than Stones.
Now, did the Denny Stone, did it bruise you up at all? Because I think I hit myself in the back of the ankle and my foot was swollen for a couple of weeks.
Not that I noticed. I mean, I was such a happy high after OSG. Like, I can't even explain. Like, I could have been in a whole bunch of pain, wouldn't have felt it after that.
Really?
So, yeah. That's how
excellent.
Ecstatic I was. Yeah.
Now, I know you did OSG previous to, of course, 2023 and 2021, you were mentioning you end up taking 4th overall. Now, do you feel like OSG is one of those contests where you usually do better the second time around because you're used to like the style and the format?
I definitely think I had an advantage with that. A lot of like first time people that were there, I don't think they were ready for the time difference, almost like nationals, like how long like first time you go to the last time you go. I mean, they had a perfect rehab setup that we saw. I was getting rehab, I was getting massage work. Like I was pretty much trying to do pop work of just like keeping myself busy, but still watching people compete. So it was very enjoyable. It's like, I felt like that weekend was like 5 minutes long. If that makes sense. I feel like I was always doing something, eating, sleeping, getting ready for the competition.
Well, it's just crazy. We were there for anywhere between like 8 hours, 10 hours a day, but we end up competing only doing like 5 or 6 minutes of work. So it's just a lot of times you just kind of really focus on when you're out there, and of course everything else in between. Now that you, of course, now won an OSG, now what does it mean to you? And of course, I think I was before the show, I was counting the amount of times. I think we talked a little bit prior, like, so we've competed against each other 4 times. We've been at the same show competing together 3 times. So I've seen you, of course, narrowly miss out the Arnold Amateur. Of course, seeing you back in 2021, and we narrowly missed the podium. So that finally kind of on the third, or for the being close and hitting it this time, and winning OSG. What does it mean to you?
It meant a lot. Like, I wouldn't even know how to explain the feeling, the gratification of like, I don't know. It's like something like you've been trying for a long time and it finally happened. Like, and you knew it should have happened a while ago, but like you're happy it happened now type stuff. So it was like, it's a feeling I hope a lot of people get eventually. That's the best way to put it. Like, it's like one of those where it's like almost undescribable in a sense for me.
All right. Now,
I'm still not finished with stuff. Like, I want to do really good at Giants Live, all stuff. But this is like knowing I'm finally in the realm I need to be in. Like, it's really, really big for me.
All right. Well, excellent. And of course, and of course, since 2018, I felt like you should have been right at the top spot. I think the Canadians called, of course, kind of always being in the mix, and OSG or the Arnold Am, and now there's like the Shaw Open, calling it the Open B team. So like I just climbed into the Open B team this year. You exited the B team. So I guess it is kind of a tough kind of area to be in, but again, of course, is one of those things where you kind of just have to put your head down and keep working, and eventually it's going to happen. So overall, OSG, like, of course, I think I talked about it on the show when I had Dan Hughes. Of course, there was a lot of kind of even like interesting moments, even of course in between times. Like I was saying, in terms of like other competitors, like last show, I was saying that we had the Masters 40s go before us, and never once saw Ron O'Heila warm up. So I felt like he just went into every event just cold, and of course end up winning the show. But did you have any funny observations throughout the weekend?
I'll say something funny. After the first event, when we started going out there for the press medley. I didn't see Nathan like warm up at all. I didn't know if he was still competing or not. And then he comes running out at the end to come do it. And I thought that was hilarious. He said he warmed up for like 5 minutes. That's all he needed.
So
stuff like that. Like that was some funny stuff.
So Nathan had his warm up gear right near where I was. So we were right through the back door. So pretty easy in, pretty easy out. But he wouldn't warm up until maybe the 5th or 6th heat when he usually was going at the end. And I think he was one of the first people to sign up. So he still was in the first event, was towards the end. So he literally waited towards at the very end, last minute. And then in between he will go back to his hotel. So he normally came in. So the one, I think on the second day I came in after him, I was like, oh no, I must be late because Nathan's already here.
Yeah. Me and him joked about it afterwards. I was like, dude, I didn't know you were competing with me today. Yeah, that was funny. I definitely do notice that people warm up a lot different. I backed off on doing a lot of stuff in between just because you just know your body's already primed and ready. So it's one of those. So like I think a lot of people like were warming up way before they should have started warming up. But other than that, everything was pretty good. Everyone has their own little way, so I just let people do their thing.
But I think it's just that experience of doing nationals, doing OSG before. I've done 3. I think leading into this, I did 3 OSGs prior where all the weight classes are together. So getting the timing down is, I think, half the battle. I remember.
Also, a big thing I saw though is people they're doing comp weight in the warm up area. That's just one of those things. Like my last deadlift before the deadlift ladder was 600 pounds. So I was warming up through the thing. So it's one of those. It's hard. Like I think a lot of people over prepare. I guess going out there for the event.
I think I did the same thing. I think there was like a 616 bar out there, and I think that was my final pull. So I did kind of very similar item. I remember there was one of the Indian competitors in our weight class said, "Hey, pick up you got to warm up with the comp bag." I'm like, I'm not touching that until I get out to the floor, and I think he ended up ripping his bicep. So I think just one of those things where you don't.
Was the biggest bag I worked up to for the both the spear and the hoop thing. So.
But just one of those things where you don't touch your comp weight, especially in the warm up area. Unless you're Mitch Hooper the day before. I don't know if you remember seeing him clean the 342 dumbbell before he hit 308, which I thought was nuts, but it wasn't the same day. So I think that's a different item.
I feel like his endurance is crazy though. So it's one of those like it probably didn't bother him the way
he just going through stuff. Probably recovered and also probably felt stronger going into the second day.
Going through it, like that.
What did you think of the block? So you were one of 3 people to finish the full medley. I found it pretty slippery, and I talk about just in other discussions where you should always account for surfaces. And I didn't know it was slippery until I actually tried it out. But did you find it a little more unusual compared to a Mauser or any other kind of blocking?
It definitely was slippery. I was a little nervous because I thought my pick would have been off because I got fatter fingers. I was nervous about getting under the actual implement itself. But once it got settled and everything, and I squeezed together, it felt pretty fine. It wasn't too bad, but definitely wasn't a Mauser. Mauser, the grip on it is ridiculous. I
Yeah.
never
So I
had
had
grip issues on that.
I think if I could have one back, I would maybe try that in the thing. Just realize the surface. But that's one thing one thing I harp on in my press seminars is to always know your surfaces. So
Yep.
I guess that's again I made a somewhat a mistake. But I also, of course, I want to move on from OSG, and I want to kind of talk about kind of what you do well, especially which is your static power, especially in the press. And one area I wanted to kind of talk about is, of course, you have a big background in powerlifting, also in the bench press. Now, do you think powerlifting bench press is a big attribute to your overhead strength, or is there other exercise and movements, or a combination of the two when it comes to your overall pressing power?
Honestly, I think bench carries over a lot for me. I like rotating them each week, especially during the off season. I keep it in. To me, it gives me my weakness is more at the lockout. So this to me gives me a different variation to kind of work on my locking out. And weight wise, my overhead press is nowhere near what my bench press is, so it's not as taxing to kind of rotate it each week. For me, and I'm still getting that tricep extension work that I'm trying to get a little more. But that's just something that works for me. I notice my bench press goes up, usually my overhead press goes up, vice versa. Except for if I take off, like during actual comp season, I do take off a little bit just because my focus is more on the overhead press. But I'm still benching even during the in season.
So for instance, you're benching one week and overhead pressing the other week. So you pretty much bench every other week.
Heavy. So it's my main
Okay.
movement every other week. But I still
Good.
overhead press, but usually it's my secondary. So it's more like, I don't want to say accessory to it, but it's just more like getting the movement pattern down. I'm really big on fundamentals. I noticed that I used to overtrain too much at heavier weights, like 773, 80 to 90% of my one rep max, and thinking more is better. Which now realizing that's probably why I tore my quad, tore my bicep by overtraining back then of all the volume and frequency I was trying to do. When I tore my bicep, I was doing biceps 3 times a week. Like that's when I was
Hmm.
like, I wouldn't say I'm the smartest with stuff, but I've also learned a lot through being myself as a guinea pig, which isn't the smartest thing, but it's definitely one of those like I've grown so much from it. Um, so it's definitely something I would consider probably like more like the rep range, like 4 sets to 5 at like 70%, but still getting the bench press down in a sense. But then I'm
Now,
focusing more.
now you were talking about the quad tear. Now that was prior to was that at ASM 2022?
No, I actually tore it at Paul Mauser's. They just did a thing in West Virginia where it's like a one-on-one matchup.
Yes.
Me and Josh were going back and forth. Um, we went into the last event, which was a squat apparatus, where people were kind of just sitting on it and were repping it out. Um, I was going like I wasn't showing off. I was kind of showing off, so it was on me as well. But it was like I was trying to rep it out because I was going to go for like a double-digit number because the weight didn't feel heavy. But I think me going down fast and trying to pop up on apparatus I've never used before because it's like the World's Strongest Man type of squat apparatus. It's just not putting the kegs in,
Sure.
but it had the feet at the bottom and just on the I think it was the fourth rep, I felt something just boop, and then I was like, I already knew because I tore my bicep beforehand, so I knew what the feeling felt like. And then so that was June 21st is when I got surgery of 21.
Hmm.
So it was 6 months before. So 6 months, and I did ASM 2022.
22. All right.
Yeah,
Got it.
that makes
All
sense.
right.
22.
Interesting. So you at that point. So you mentioned a big thing in overtraining. So was that overtraining in squat or other movements?
So I was back then. I basically did the. I grew up on a bodybuilding style split, chest, biceps, legs, off day, uh, back and hamstrings, and then shoulders and triceps type of split. So I kind of like developed from that, like 5x5. I was trying to go heavy on squats, trying to go heavy on deadlifts 2 days later, stuff like that on my back day. Um, I think at the beginner level, like it wasn't too bad. I got progress. I benched 500 my senior year in high school, stuff like that. But my deadlift always suffered to my squat. So then once I realized that my deadlift is one of those recovering wise, I don't deadlift but twice a month, and it's every 2 weeks. And I'm just now starting to back squatting heavy. But my deadlift, by backing off that much, my deadlift went nuts. So
Interesting.
it's
So,
weird how the body works per person.
So interesting. So every other week on the deadlift as well?
Yeah,
On
most
heavy?
heavy. Yep. You're a 5'3" or 1, but whatever I do, I'm trying to like send it.
Send it. All right. Interesting. And of course, interesting, of course, approach. Um, Now the other items I've seen, of course, you really excel at is a lot of times in terms of moving events, especially on the yoke and frame.
Yep.
I remember seeing your yoke for the first time back in Vegas in 2017. I think we were in the same heat. I took third in that yoke, but I remember watching the video back. It looked like I was walking in like slow motion compared to like you running by in the yoke. And I think we had like an 800, 900 yoke at the time.
Yeah, I think it was 900, I believe.
900. So what do you attribute again, like foot speed, even just like those movement implements? Of course, I know you need like on the yoke, you need a strong core frame, you need a strong grip, but is there any other intangibles that you would attribute
I
those
think my
events to?
football background, we always did footwork and stuff. It's one of those, I played at Coastal Carolina, and it's like at that level, I feel like you have to be able to move for a big guy, especially playing defensive lineman. So it's one of those we always, as a group of D linemen, go out there and practice footwork. And I think that helped carry it over to the yoke because the way I kind of set it up, I have like a 6-inch step almost at my foot pattern. So it's one of those, just practicing the fundamentals, going over and over, just helped out and carry it over.
All right. Interesting. So more kind
And
of.
I think it was supposed to be yoked to farmers in that thing, but because of the floor, they had to just do yoke.
Yes, yes, it was. Yeah, I remember that.
That's when Trey was running away with it.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I said to you at that nationals the first time we met?
I can barely remember a week from that yesterday.
Yeah, I was saying, I was like, hey, hey, Marcus Chowder, how are you? And I think you had your headphones in, you looked at me, and I think you just walked away. So it wasn't a good, I was like, oh, that wasn't a good joke. But I think we ended up.
I don't even remember. I don't even pay attention for half the time. I'm telling you, I'm in a different world majority of the time. That competition.
I know.
It's a different vibe.
But I just thought, of course, I thought it was funny, but of course, we end up catching up after.
On Facebook. So I know it pops up every once in a while from that South Carolina rep.
Now, so we were talking a little bit. So you mentioned a little bit playing football at Coastal Carolina. But what originally got you into the sport? Because you popped in the scene around like 2016. Is that right?
Yeah. So I actually quit football to start Strongman. My senior year, football was never like, I didn't mind it. I loved my friends and stuff on that from it, but it was one of those like, I just wanted a full scholarship, and then I'm gonna get my degree, and then I'm pretty much gonna bounce. So that year was one of those when they said if your heart's not into it, that they'll still honor your scholarship for a semester, and all I needed was that semester to basically graduate. So it was one of those. I was like, all right, I'm gonna pursue my dream into Strongman. Which the only reason I really wanted to do Strongman was because watching Marcus Johnson on ESPN in like third grade, it's always been one of those like that's what I want to do. So I'm very fortunate too that my dad he opened a gym and like I was 5 years old. So it's one of those I'd actually like grew up and was raised in a gym from a young age. So it's definitely one of those I've been very blessed with the opportunity to pursue my dream.
Interesting. Now, so you said so you knew I was Strongman as early as third grade.
Yep, watching Marcus Johnson on ESPN.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty.
I got hooked and then watching YouTube. It's just one of those. That's always I was gonna play football because my brother played football, and then once I was done with football, I was gonna do Strongman.
Interesting. So you ready at an early age? You already had a kind of your career planned out. Of course,
yeah.
I did not know. Now, so I was taking a look back. So was your first show originally? It was North Carolina Strongest Man with Lynn?
26, yeah. Lynn, he put on NC Strongest, 2016. It was back then they had the like platinum things, so where you can go like you get first place, you get an online invite, second and third, you get a nationals invite. Back then they had those in 2016 with Strongman Corp.
All right, so now we're back with part 2 with Marcus Crowder. We got a little bit interrupted today, or last time, but we're just going through. We just went through, of course, kind of he got started in the sport, but now that he is big time, how will you continue? Will you continue doing powerlifting, and will you spend more time on Strongman going forward?
Going forward, my dream, like I said, always been strongman, going to get in the world. So right now I'm putting powerlifting on hold. I'm still going to do the movements like the bench, squat, just kind of like build them during my off season. But once I start prep again, I'll be moving strictly just strongman movements and accessories towards strongman movements. Does that make sense? So
Now,
no
was that always
powerlifting.
the plan? Was that
Um,
always the plan? Just do powerlifting until you got the strength for it?
so no, I realized my carryover of trying to be good at both sports. I one always kind of suffered. When I actually put squats on the back burner, my deadlifts went up. So seeing how much it increased, I was like, well, if uh, squatting for more volume and not heavier weight, and just keeping the heavier weight with the deadlift, what happens if I put bench on more of the volume and then really push the over press just to see how the carryover will go as far as recovery.
Oh,
Because at one point I
interesting.
think I was overtraining way too much, and then just trying to be, I was top 10 in 308 knee sleeves in powerlifting, but like I always kind of like I never got to that next level in strongman until actually this past year is the first year that I was like, okay, I'm putting powerlifting movements on the back burner, and then use it more as accessories and see what happens. My deadlift went from, I think most I ever pulled in comp was like 850. I ended up pulling 903 raw in the gym, and then pulling a 955 in a single ply suit in the gym. So I mean, it's almost a 100-pound increase, and all I changed was I went more plyometrics, so a lot more jumping. I hate jumping, but I have seen carryover with it, and then also just letting my body giving it time to heal instead of going heavy and pushing it all the time each week.
All right, I want to stick on the jumping part because I also don't like jumping, but I know it's something that
Yeah.
I lack. What's a protocol or exercises or a workout day of jumping look like for Marcus Crowder?
Um, so I usually do it on my lighter days. Um, or I'll prime myself for my deadlift. So it kind of just depends. It's usually always lower body. I never really do it on upper body days, but nothing crazy like 3 sets of 5. Usually in a circuit of some sort. But most like I first started off just doing regular box jumps, and now I'm kind of like I'm trying to make it more fun. So lately I've been jumping over a box and then doing like a broad jump because I really don't like broad jumps. So I was like, I'm one of those. I do my own programming. So if I don't like it, I'll put it in there, but I'll also put in a lot of stuff I do like. So trying to make it more enjoyable, but yet get the same amount of work into it. But never nothing too crazy. Like I said, three sets of 5. Usually I'll do like a core, the box jump, and then maybe like a squat, just kind of getting into like blood flow. Especially like the off season right now, that's what I
Now,
usually do with like 90-second reps.
would you put the box jumps before heavy pulls, or was it you were saying before mostly on lighter days?
So if I so if I'm priming it for my dead, I actually started doing it beforehand. So I'll do my warm up, my PT type stuff to get everything, my glutes firing, my like one-legged RDLs to get everything kind of primed, and then also do box jumps. Instead of doing 3 rounds of 5, I might do 3 sets of 2 or 3 reps on the box or on some type of variation for the plyo. And I feel like the carryover of getting my glutes firing and my hips more loose, it carried over into the deadlifts. So.
All right, interesting. And I've seen that that correlation between jumping, kind of that working on that explosion, transferring over to deadlift, especially if someone's a little lacks that explosion power. But I don't feel like that's
Yep.
something that you look for. But I could see the activation being a huge component. So just so reversing back on that on your last answer. So of course this past year you spent a little more on strongman, of course, put some powerlifting goals to the side, but in the previous years, now was it like a 50-50 split between strongman and powerlifting, or did you have a different percentage towards one
So
lift or the other, or one sport to the other?
looking back, I was probably more towards powerlifting, not realizing I was doing a 5-day split, lower body, upper body type stuff, um, kind of heavy in both lifts, but like keeping it more like a rep range. But I always deadlift, I always squatted, I always benched, I always overhead press. Um, and then my 5th day was more strongman, like medleys, like two felt carries, stand back loads, stone loads, stuff like that. But it was like an all day type stuff. It just was no actually barbell movement that day. So I feel like looking back, it was probably more powerlifting geared. because powerlifting. I feel like powerlifting is a really good base to build up for strongman. Just because it's one of those, it's two static lifts going into it out of usually the 5 events. Um, but it's also one of those that it's you're never going to bench press really into a competition unless like you're going to count the Shaw Classic past year, which has been really cool to do the vertical bench press. I think I've done really well at that, but the carryover from powerlifting to strongman, I feel like I got more of a carryover honestly from playing football for strongman than probably the actual powerlifting movement in a sense, as far as like the
Interesting.
movement, the yoke run, stuff along those lines.
The reason why I asked, because for a while, probably between 2012 and 2015, I was doing strongman and strongman competitions, but I was also doing a lot of Olympic lifting on the side as well. And I was doing, and of course, only 2 movements in terms of snatch and clean and jerk, but just spending a lot of time on snatch, and of course my pressing shot straight up, but things like my deadlift end up suffering in some other kind of more posterior based events. So I made once I won my pro card, I kind of made the conscious decision where I probably should stop snatching because it didn't really make sense, but I would continue doing power cleans and cleans. But I'm always kind of interested, because I imagine the powerlifting got you so far in terms of getting that static strength, because you were the most static person at OSG this year. But to what point is it more hindering your progress than was? So I think you got to that teeter point where it's time to put it on the back burner. But I think I always try to figure out where that fine line is. And I think every athlete just has to experience that for themselves.
And I think once you get to a certain level, your strength progresses so much that the recovery and you're moving heavier weight, even though it's not, the number isn't crazy, but it's still better than what you did in the beginning. So it's one of those still going to take that load that you have to realize, like, I'm benching 500 for reps. That's going to hinder my overhead press that week as well, because it's just something that I wasn't used to. So backing it off and focusing more on the form, and making the overhead press more a priority, I think it's to help so far this year, to help my overhead be a little more, like, especially the straight part of it, a little more carryover. But I think like you said, it depends on athlete. Yeah.
And then you're to talk about the strict press. Now you strict press 465, right? Was that before ASM?
Out of a rack, yes, out of a rack. I definitely have to mention that, because the clean, I don't think people realize how much the clean really takes out of you, especially if your mobility. At my time, I feel like my front rack position is crap. It's still something I've been trying to work on with my lats and everything. But the clean took so much out of me. Even at the ASM this year, I think 440. Like I probably would say I had one of my weaker cleans, which I think is the reason why I didn't get that lift on that. So it's just one of those.
Interesting.
Out of the rack's fun and everything, but Andrew Clayton, he's really big on working the clean. You're probably really big on working the clean. I saw you doing the 400 log clean. Work the clean, people. Work the clean.
Yeah.
I like, but gym bro.
I was gonna say I like to add those like heavy cleans maybe towards the end of a let's just say a max press block, that you have a max press coming up. So whatever weight you're doing, going 20 pounds heavier, maybe doing a 2x2, or sometimes like or three singles, but just working on those heavier cleans. So and this kind of goes into my next segment. So after OSG, I saw a lot of individuals get back into training, and they're of course going pretty hard. Sometimes the first week they go for like big PRs or go for fun lifts, and then they get back into their nitty gritty. Again, in December, since OSG, I've actually only trained 4 times, but that was probably more than I would normally. Probably I would have done more bodybuilding workouts and hypertrophy workouts, because that's kind of my next goal for this off season. But I just see a lot of people going pretty hard during the holidays. So for you, did you get back right into training? Or what do you recommend in terms of getting back in training after the holidays, or not even after the holidays, after a big contest like OSG? Do you think it's wise? Do you think it's wise to go really hard during the holidays, or do you think people need to settle down and take it easy and then start getting back into training?
So the older I got, I usually ask myself why. Like, why would I want to do certain things? I think Instagram has made it a lot more convenient for people to show off, but yet what's technically the point? I do certain things knowing that I am going to put on Instagram to kind of like show off. But it's also like nothing counts unless you do it at the competition. So me personally, like I said, after ASM, I took the week off. After OSG, I actually took 2 weeks off. 1 week because no matter what, I'll take a week off. The second week, I actually got my wisdom teeth pulled, so I just took that week off as well. I think people
All right.
think that more is more. Where it's one of those like if you have a competition coming up and you have to get back into it, and maybe it's an event that you're not used to, do it at like a 50% max range. But no, I don't know why people want to max after comp. Like you just if you gave everything you into that comp, you really shouldn't be maxing or hitting PRs in my opinion afterwards. But I know a lot of powerlifters and stuff. They'll go in and somehow lift more a couple days later after the comp, which makes me wonder how peaking's going. But that's person to person. Like I'm never going to judge anyone for it, but it's also one of those. Like I personally, I'm taking that week off. I put my body through hell during prep. I left it all out on the platform, and then see what happens. So.
I would agree with you. I'm normally about a week. I think what I did for this for right after OSG, I did 3 weeks off, just because I knew I don't have anything. I'm a big component of not going too hard after daylight savings time and in the winter because you're just so stiff and just a hard time. But I also, if you ever get the opportunity, I don't know if you ever listened to Martine's podcast that we had, but he had a lot of great tidbits about you only really go heavy throughout the year, 4 months out of the 12 months. The rest is a lot of ancillary accessory work and all these different type of movements to get you ready for the heavy training. So why are you spending December, a month that doesn't have, you don't have any competitions coming up? You don't have big goals coming up in January, February. Why are you pushing yourself so hard? Because you only have so many months that you can actually go heavy. And then when actually stuff does matter, when we get into the spring, get into the summer, where we see a bulk of our competitions for not only open heavyweights, but for weight class athletes, why you don't want to go into that period burnt out. And I think I've done that in the past where I've trained too hard in the winter and I burned myself by the time we got to the spring where people are actually peaking. I'm actually trying to just keep my body in one piece.
Yeah, when I was younger, I thought more was more too. Looking back, like I wish I'd had the. Not saying I'm smart, but I definitely feel like I'm more intelligent than I was. Because before I used to go hard. Like I haven't squatted because I was doing strongman, so I had to go hard squatting, trying to not max, but go get some weight on my back pretty fast. Where now, like I'll do blood flow, accessory work, bodybuilding style, like you said, for a couple weeks, and it doesn't mess with me mentally anymore. It's not as fun, so I guess people probably do it more for the fun part, but it's also you gotta like stay on course to your goals, like you said. So Martinez, that makes a lot of sense with all what he's saying. I'm actually gonna have to go watch that video. I don't know if I've seen it yet.
He, but of course, he takes a different approach, taking a whole year off. But he was very interesting in that podcast because he said when he was talking to me at the time, and I think it was after Worlds of 2022, but before the Rogue Invitational. So he said he only had 4 heavy shows left in him. So that means Rogue would have been took him 1 away. That means he has 3 left. He didn't do anything this year, and then is signed up for the Arnold this coming year. So is he only going to do 2 more competitions after then? I think he was. I'm not sure if that how realistic that only 4 more heavy competitions. It was very specific. So I just found that as a interesting tidbit. But we've been pretty positive so far on the podcast. But in the world of strongman, Marcus, is there anything that grinds your gears that you see from either young lifters or competitors or just in the world of strongman that you want to get off your chest? And if you don't have one, I can give you one that it's been bothering me lately.
I'd probably say in the performance enhancing drugs. I feel like a lot of people think you need more of it. I used to be one of those ones that I used to cruise and blast a lot. I'm hearing a lot of younger athletes talking about higher substance intake, which I don't see why. It's one of those. I think less is more with lifting and less is more with performance enhancing drugs. It's definitely one of those. I would love for people to do more research, talk to more people. I do wish it was a little more open out there. I actually just recently went to a physician assistant that kind of specializes in that stuff. So I'm actually scripted testosterone now, which is pretty nice. I probably can get on a plane now with it. It's definitely one of those. I do feel like it's a taboo area with people, especially with sponsorships and stuff. That I think that it should be a little more knowledgeable out there. But yeah, that's probably the only thing. I wouldn't say it takes a lot to get on my skin. So most time I let people just do what they want to do. So, but I do know a couple people that make sure you do blood work. If you are going to go this route, just be smart about it. Don't listen to everything you see online because I've seen some outrage and stuff online. So more along those lines.
I always say in that regards, it's kind of the least effective dose possible. You want to do as well as kind of on the minimum. And of course, you get tidbits in terms of blood work and monitoring those different levels because everybody's different, and there's no really big scientific articles or peer review articles on kind of what we do and what we put our bodies through. So you are putting yourself in terms of becoming a human test subject for this field. So of course you want to do it smart. So I would say, even if it's the difference between kind of what you did in one training cycle compared to the other, I think it needs to be small increases rather than drastic increases. Your body can only handle X amount. But I'll give you something that's grinding my gears in the world of strongman. And this is more kind of pertaining Instagram. You have individuals that, of course, talk about grinding day in and day out, or going really hard, and they do a big set they post a big set, but they never post the weights. So I'm a big data guy. So I'm looking at this. I'm like, I can't really tell if you're working hard or not, or if it's bullshit, or if it's not because you're not posting the weights. And I would say this is maybe, it's not a huge trend, but maybe like 30% of what I see on Instagram, people don't post the weights. And for someone that I look at, so for instance, the weights, especially if they're correct, helps me validate if that person's form is working, if what they're doing is there. So if I can take that piece and apply it to my own training. But I usually, when they don't post the weights and they talk about how hard they're working, it just grinds my gears.
Yeah, and you go off that, a lot of people, I think a lot of people don't post because they're trying to get that edge on people, and they don't want people knowing what they're lifting. Which to me, competition day, like, I don't look to see who I'm competing against most of the time. I usually know a lot of people can actually see their Instagram and see they're doing the events, but like as far as names, I don't really look at names and stuff, and I don't get why people don't post the weights. At the end of the day, what you do at competition is what you do. So it's just one of those. I don't know if they're like nervous about it with the other competition competitors, but to me, I'm working hard as I'm gonna work no matter who I'm showing up against. So yeah, I get why that can grind your gears and stuff. But you're a lot smarter with me, like as far as like the science part of it. So it makes sense being a little nosy to see how
it's more just. It's more, I just like to kind of take a look. But what's nice about, I would say, even nowadays, or just getting into pro levels, or just looking at competitors that have competed a while, is that you can just now go on Strongman archives and look up what they did in competitions, and then gauge from there. So you can get it. So there's really nowhere to hide. And somehow maybe one of the times when the results might have been because they flopped or it was a bad result, but more often than not, they're only going to improve X amount from what if it was a good event for them. So I usually, of course, that's a good point too. I think I've talked about it, Dan Hughes. You don't want to kind of like be watching competition going forward, but I do like the different data points. I do like to, of course, like for instance, I was watching your training, and I want to see how your training is how it's going to lead into the competition going forward. So I can now look back at, of course, you won. You had a great result. So if I'm getting ready for a similar contest, I can go back to for instance, your Instagram. If we have, like, let's say there's another frame to Denny, I'm going to see what Marcus Crowder did 2 weeks out before then, and see if that would correlate to my own training. So I can see kind of what works. Usually what I've seen that doesn't work is when people go way over competition, the competition weight leading into a heavy contest like OSG.
I just don't. Maybe like a myth, like I said, like the mental thing of it. Like I don't really get to the point of going way over competition weight on certain things if it's not like a max event. So it's definitely one of those. But I will say this though, I'm really big on like how my body feels that day. So if you can figure out how I train, let me know, because I don't even know how exactly I train most of the time. I know it's weird. Like it's like I got a blueprint on my reps, scheme, stuff like that. But as far as weight wise, Like for instance, I had heavier pulls yesterday. I knew I wanted to do a top set of 3 and then some back downs, but I had no idea where the weight was going to go. My body felt really good after pulling 695. I was like, let me throw 90 more pounds on here. And then I went for 765 for 3 and then did some back downs at like 495. So it's like I'm getting that stimulus and then I'm coming back down and then I do my accessory work. So it's one like
All right.
I
So
probably
that
should
seems
do
like a
something
pretty good day.
Yeah, but I think less is, like I said, less is more. So not having like I think a lot of people try to confuse and do too much. Kind of like not trying to hate on anything, but like a lot of people love West Side. To me, West Side for me was too much different variables. Where like I kind of like dumb it down. It's the best thing for me. So keep it to the basics.
Yeah, I agree there. But Marcus, I was searching on YouTube the other day and I found a YouTube channel for Marcus Crowder, and the one thing I saw there was you doing making some coffee. Are you now that of course you're going to be a little more on the pro circuit? Do you plan on ramping your YouTube up?
I'll be honest. I don't know if I'm that type of guy. I try. I'll do little things, but like my friend Jay has actually helped me with that. With everything I did for the coffee, it's what he told me to do. If I could find someone that kind of like, hey, let's do this today, I probably would. But as far as me like getting creative with ideas of how to kind of ramp it up, I honestly I just want to lift. I want to become the strongest. That's always been my goal. So it's one of those like I don't know if I'll ever be like that funny, like Martine's doing, stuff like that. Like I don't know. I'm never gonna say never, but it's also gonna be one of those. I'm like I would need help on that aspect of it to get me motivated to ramp it up.
All right, so
That makes sense.
So you need like a Romark or
yeah, someone that's a little more creative.
Yeah.
In that part of it.
There was two, but it's always sometimes the YouTube does kind of give a look into it. I think you don't always have to be. I found like other channels, you don't always have to be Mr. Personality or funny, but just have to add value or just put in kind of what you thought. I think, of course, the person that gets put out a lot now is Sam Sulik because he's just very open about his training and what he does. He doesn't say that everything he does is perfect, but he puts out a lot of anecdotal information and you can kind of take what you want from it. So I think that's always kind of helpful. And of course, I think I'm not the only one that would say that they want to see more Marcus Crowder on the internet. But talking about next year, so knowing that you have a Giants Live invite and you were talking about probably the deadlift one would be the one that you want to do, and that's out in September. What else would you have planned going forward, or what kind of goals do you have for the year of 2024?
So right now, like I said before, I'm basically just trying to get really healthy, get stronger. My lighter body weight, I haven't been below 320 now since like 2020. I'm walking around about 316. I feel really good. My sleep's feeling really good. My strength's still where I want it to be at the moment. As of right now, I'm going to probably stay in off season to about February, and then I know it's like I can't guarantee anything, but it's also one of those. World Strongest Man is like 3 hours from me this year. It's in Myrtle Beach. It's one of those. I think I'm a prep. Like I am getting that invite just in case it's like I can at least get an alternative invite, which would be awesome. If not, I'll probably just do like a mock show for myself in May. Probably go watch the World Strongest Man since it's 3 hours away, and then get my body like. Let's say I do finally find out what Giants Live invite I'm getting. Maybe do something along those lines and go ahead and start just training for it, if that makes sense. So like prep a little bit for May and then take off a little bit and then prep for whichever competition I get invited to in September. So that way I'm still like in the motion of everything, but not. I probably won't kill myself in May unless I do get that invite. It's just one of those I still want to kind of like kick for something. But I won't do actually.
Now, do you have a competition number that you have in mind? Like for instance, like I said, this past year I did 4. This coming year, I want to try maybe shoot for like 6 competitions. And I think because I always want to keep getting more exposure to different events, go to different countries, meet different people. But do you have a kind of like a competition, kind of like where you're not necessarily a niche, but like a nice golden area that you find like if I did X amount of competitions that you would be happy with it in 2024?
Usually with like traveling and stuff, everything like I first started off in like 2016. I think I was doing nationals, I was doing Arnold's, and then I did nationals, and then I did Arnold's type thing, and then finally ASM came around. So it's one of those, like, I can do 2 competitions or I can do 6. It kind of just depends on the ultimate goal. Right now, like, giant slab takes priority over everything. I did get invited to Las Vegas Strongest, Big Ronnie. I think that's who he's putting on. It's just one of those, like traveling and putting the money in with everything. It's a little more like, I own my gym, kind of stay here, make sure everything's running smooth here with stuff. Um, so it's kind of like the priority of the event that I will is why I would do it. So like last year, I ended up doing 3 competitions. I did NC Strongest because it was an hour and a half away. That's where I did the mammoth bar deadlift. So it's kind of like a two for that one. Then I did ASM and then OSG, obviously. I, prepping wise, I'd rather prep for a lot of shows because I love being in prep. But it's also one of those, like, I don't mind it being spread out. So this year, I might just do giant slides if it all ends up do the one show and then see where it goes from there. So, but
All right,
like I said,
excellent.
So
Of course, that'll be exciting. I would say for the most part, I would say I hope you get that invite to Worlds. Because the last 2 OSG winners have made it to Worlds, and not only Pavel Koryaka because he's Ukrainian, but Spencer Remnick for the USA. So I want to say normally, I think maybe in 2020 they took 8 Americans. I think this past year was 7 Americans. I think I counted the other day. So It's just where do they find the top 7, and how do you keep potentially? I would say, let's say maybe the bottom half is maybe like subject to change, and you have someone like Brian Shaw stepping out of the limelight, and he always took up a spot at the last 14 years, 15 years. Yeah. He competed at World's Strongest Man, so that spot is open. So will Marcus Crowder fill that spot? I hope so, because I would say having Worlds 3 hours away would just is pretty nuts. That you could be, and it's World's Strongest Man, and it's right in your backyard.
Yep. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Like I said, I'm not getting my hopes up. I've done certain things that haven't really got me anywhere. So it's one of those, like, I don't mind keep working and digging. And if I have to go prove it at Giant Slab, I'll go prove it at Giant Slab. Like, I'm ready for anything now. This year, like, it gave me like a second win with everything, how long everything's been taken. So it'd be awesome to at least get the alternative invite. But if not, I'll go do my thing at Giant Slab, and then I'll get my invite 25. So I don't mind working 40 anymore.
Excellent. And then the last one, that the Las Vegas Open, is that the contest that's like in April, like late April or something like that?
Yeah, I believe so. I didn't look too much into it because I told him it depends. He invited me before OSG, and I told him it just depends on my placement at OSG and then when those competitions are. But I definitely think they look like good events, look a lot of fun. It's just one of those with traveling and everything. It's not in the books, especially if there might be a chance if something does happen where, like, if someone doesn't get a visa or they can't make it, to Myrtle Beach, and then there could be a chance of me like getting into it. I don't want to be prepping for something and then all of a sudden that happens. In the case, I'd rather just go ahead and start prepping like I am getting invited to it.
So. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I did see I think the Las Vegas Open had a really heavy truck pull. I think it was like one of those big army duty trucks with the multiple axles, which usually makes it a little harder.
And I think it was like a max deadlift. I don't know if it was like 16 inches or so. It was a heavy show. Like it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's just one of those. It's just not in the book for me this year. I like
excellent.
Me and him are really close. So I hate that I'm missing his first competition that he's putting on. I think him and Jacob might be doing it together, from my understanding. But they didn't go too much detail.
All right. Interesting. But of course, I hope other great American heavyweights end up kind of going. But that's all my questions for today, Marcus. Of course, I appreciate taking the time. I'm going to for the listeners, I'm going to have your Instagram below so they can follow your journey, especially heading into these Giants live shows and potentially World's Strongest Man. Of course, fingers crossed. And what I've been doing for the show lately is kind of leaving you with the last word. So we're going to end the recording with a few words of advice from Marcus Crowder. So what's the last piece of advice you want to leave the listeners?
I really want people to know, like I said, less is more. Don't think, that video of everyone's like, you got to grind, you can't breathe, stuff like that. certain things, of course. When it comes to this type of stuff, listen to your body. Try to, ask for help. A lot of people are really nice, giving a lot of free information out there. Look online first, because a lot of things you can find. A lot of questions people ask me, I feel like you can go Google and find the questions that they're looking for. But it's one of those, if you need someone to help out and everything, a lot of great coaches out there. Offer money, because it's also one of those, like, this is what a lot of people work for. Don't just try to get the free information and kind of bum it. If there's anything in the beginning of this show that maybe you want me to go in more detail, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. I usually try to answer everyone back, unless it's like people hitting on me. That's on a lot of guys in my DMs. Started off in a good way, but let me know that it's real, and then it'll be good to go. So that's all I got.
All right. Well, you heard it there. Thank you, Marcus.